Well, welcome to another monthly installment of the Meetings of Membership Minds. This one's going to be a special one because we invited Tony Russell back to talk about the MGI benchmarking survey results from 2021, which should help inform everyone with what's going on within the association world and the trends, especially around membership. So welcome, Tony. Glad to have you here.
I'm always happy to join you, Dan. It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
And welcome everyone else. Glad to see some familiar faces and names showing up on the screen here. So Tony, I'm kind of going to go ahead and kind of turn it over to you. I know I've done my really quick review over the report, and I think I've been part of some other sessions around this report, but I can't wait to hear more about what's going on with it.
Well, thanks, Dan. And what I think I'll do is I just pulled a couple slides just to sort of start the conversation, and then we can continue. You can ask me as we go through a couple slides, and then we certainly can continue the conversation. Because not surprisingly, the last year was really a challenge for associations, and it'd be easy for me to go through all the negative data. But I thought one of the things I would do today is sort of talk through some of the things that did work last year for associations, and some of the positives that came out of the really traumatic time. So let me see if I can share this okay. Host disabled participant screen sharing. So you're going to have to allow me to screen share if you want me to, Dan.
I'm muted, but I just made you the host. There we go. And there, okay. You're muted, Tony.
All righty. Everybody see that?
Yep, got it.
Okay, great. So let me just walk through. I'm just going to walk through some of these items that I hope you find of interest. I think that there's some interesting things that came out of last year's research. Just a quick recap. This is the 13th year we've done this study. We had over 800 associations participate this year. Over the years, we've done this for, as I said, for 13 years. We've had thousands of associations tell us all their data. So one of the things we're able to do is do some trending information over the years that can be really interesting. I will say that anything we highlight here, we see correlations. We're not trying to represent that everything we indicate here is a causation. But clearly, if you see a correlation between, like one of the things we saw last year was that organizations that had automatic credit card renewal tended to have higher renewal rates than those that didn't. And it makes sense if your mail's not getting through to your members, or if they have to make that decision each year to renew, you're typically going to do a little bit worse. So the automatic credit card renewals, for instance, did well. So we see a correlation there. If you don't do that, it's something certainly to consider and look at. So here's some of the key things that we did come across that I thought were really interesting. One of the things that I preach, and I'm open to debate, you guys can challenge me on this, but one of the things that I always preach is that a key to growing your association membership is recruitment. I mean, associations for the most part do a very good job on renewal and retention. Year after year, we see the median renewal rate, when you include trades and individuals, about 80%. And we've held about constant on that, maybe dropping a point or so during this time. But one of the things that we see clearly is that groups that can find a way to bring new people into the funnel, that can add members, typically are seeing growth. And so I thought this was really interesting. So we looked at the change in new member acquisition. Of those groups that saw overall membership growth, 63% of them said that they saw an increase in their new member input. Whereas of those groups and only 7% of the groups that saw an increase in their new membership input actually didn't grow. So again, I think that the thing that I find fascinating here is year after year, we see a correlation between groups that find a way to succeed in bringing in new members, even in difficult years, and they tend to see overall membership growth. And so that was one of the interesting things that came out of this research again, that even in this challenging year, those groups saw some improvement and saw some overall growth in their membership. I'm going to just highlight now just some things that came out of this that I think are points of light from this data in an otherwise challenging and difficult year that I think are helpful for us to look at. And one thing is, and I don't think anyone will be surprised at this, we asked groups, how innovative is your organization? And the ones that said that, hey, I'm either extremely innovative or very innovative, we saw a clear correlation with those groups with seeing growth in their membership. So even again, in a down year, those groups saw a growth. And what we saw also is there's a real increase in the proportion of groups that consider themselves innovative. And we're going to see some of those innovations in a minute or two, but typically, and it's not surprising, typically in difficult times, there is a push to innovate. There's a push to pivot. There's a push to do things differently. And so I think one of the points of light coming out of this recession and pandemic period is that groups and associations basically said, hey, I've got to do things differently. I've got to innovate. I've got to think creatively. And so we see that taking place, and we see a correlation with growth. Here's another thing that was, so we drilled down a little bit on innovation and tried to get a better handle on, okay, if you say you're innovative, what are you doing? What has changed? Clearly, and this is not at all surprising, 85% of the group said they'd increase their virtual professional development opportunities for members. That was a huge lift for a lot of groups. If you weren't doing virtual meetings, to get those in place and implement those, that's a huge lift. But 85% of the groups said they'd increased what they've been doing before. Here's a fascinating one. And this again is I think really encouraging. 78% of the respondents said that they developed new products or services to assist members and member companies. So again, huge level of innovation. People are trying new things. They're creating products, they're creating services to really speak to the situation their members found themselves in. And then, the other thing that had to happen, and I don't know if you found this in your organizations or not, but the whole decision process was streamlined. Sometimes change for associations is really challenging, and there's board issues, there's staff issues, there's silos, there's territorial issues. But again, 68% of the folks said to us that they reevaluated or streamlined their internal processes to get things done. So I'll pause there. I have a couple more slides related to innovation, but I'll just pause there to see if anybody can relate to any of those things or has any thoughts about them.
Well, this is Sharon. We definitely had more new members in the last year. We were also in a good, I don't want to say a good industry for a pandemic, but relatively speaking, we're not like in the hospitality industry or anything like that. So I think we were fortunate in that respect. But we started doing inbound marketing, using HubSpot and a marketing partner, and just almost exactly 2 years ago, and have really, really seen a lot of new leads and been able to convert them to members. So that's where our new members are coming. And I think that was super helpful during the pandemic because we did see our retention rate go down.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because overall, and you can look in the report, only 24% of associations said their retention rate went up this last year compared to 48% the previous year. So retention was certainly hit hard. I will say, Sharon, it's a great point. I think there's been an explosion in the use of digital marketing platforms over the last number of years. And in our clients, the highest ROI of any channel we're using right now, except for email, obviously, but email can only push out so many emails, is digital. And so it's interesting that you found such success with that, because that is certainly an opportunity that every association should explore right now.
Yeah, I think our overall membership was up. Our fiscal year ends June 30th. So June 30th this year, we were up 4% overall membership where we were the year before, which is pretty good. And during a pandemic, we were very happy.
You should be. And Sharon, remind me, what group are you with?
Medical Writers, American Medical Writers Association.
Got it.
We did have, I mean, our retention was down. We do have, some members that lost jobs or spouses lost jobs, that kind of situation. So we did implement a hardship policy, which we had not had before. Not that many people took advantage of it, but so I think we were somewhat protected compared to a hospitality industry type association.
Yeah.
So that's helpful. But we did see our retention go down, but we did see new members go up. Now I think our challenge is going to be keeping those new members, and how many of them were, oh, I'll try medical writing, because we've always had that struggle. I want to work at home. That I love writing. It's like, it's not that easy. So we're working on that part now, though.
Yeah, I'm glad you're really engaging them. That's going to be critical. And, it is interesting because we are, and I'm going to get into some information here, but I really do encourage you to look at the full report, because we did see a lot more associations offering hardship renewal options in our data. And the other thing we saw was that the number of associations that had created or increased their grace period for members went way up. So those were two ways that associations tried to empathize and accommodate members this last year to try to keep them on board.
Hey, Tony,
We
quick
debated.
question.
Go ahead.
Sorry, someone else was, yeah.
I was sharing again, just saying we debated the grace period thing and decided not to do it overall because it's kind of an accounting nightmare. But on individual basis, people were like, we have a lot of freelance. They're like, oh, I'm waiting for some bills to be paid, some of their, business for them to get paid. So, we had we were empowered individually to say, oh, let me go ahead and extend you a couple months. And so we did it like that, more on a case by case basis, which is really appreciated. Yeah.
Hey, Tony, just a quick question for you. Historically, I thought your middle figure was fascinating, where so many people are adding products and services, in the past year. And that almost flies in the face of the idea that, hey, staff themselves, there might have been RIFs or furloughs and things like that. And it's a little bit harder to launch stuff, in the middle of a downturn, Do you think a lot of those folks were actually sort of regarding, like their hybrid meetings and things like that as a new service? Or how would you sort of explain that? Because seeing that the vast majority were, opening new products and services during a time when usage might have been low, except for those, seems kind of funny. Yeah.
Great. It's a great question, Kevin. And we didn't drill down onto what they defined. We have a little bit of that I'll show in a subsequent slide, but we didn't really drill down on that. But we did see, and your intuition is right, we did 20% of the associations who responded, which is quite a large number, did layoffs or hour cuts or furloughs. So there was certainly a reduction in staff for 1 in 5 associations, which is, I'm sure, historic compared to any recent period. But we didn't ask that specifically, but I will highlight some areas where people said they saw a lot of growth and participation in the next slide or two. One of the things we did ask, and again, we did see a correlation here with groups that are growing. And I think this is something that my hope is we're going to see this growing year over year, is having an innovation process at an association, and not just sort of ad hoc, like, oh, a board member wants to do this, but instituting some kind of a process so you're continually thinking about how can we do things differently, how can we do things better, how can we improve things. And about 20% of associations told us that they did have that kind of a process or program in place. I thought this was interesting too, related to innovation, because one of the things we said is, how does your association support innovation? And we had obviously a number of different possible answers. Here's the top ones here. But what I thought was really interesting was there are some that correlated with membership growth and some that didn't. And I do think that providing encouragement to innovative employees had a clear correlation with growth, and hiring the right people also did. It's interesting because the top down groups, so that's how they innovate, is CEO pushing down or the board pushing down. We didn't see a correlation with growth there. So it's maybe incidental, but it makes sense to me that people interacting with the members, the people on the front lines dealing with the members, and people coming in from the outside, bringing new ideas and opportunities, it makes sense to me that those would drive innovation effectively compared to, you know, the board saying, hey, watch this program. But any thoughts on that? Anyone seeing success with their frontline folks coming up with ideas compared to a top-down approach?
I like to ask our front line, you know what, I never know how to answer this question about being innovative on the NGI survey because I feel like we are. So I'd be curious how everyone else defines it, first of all. But I do like to ask, you know, the two primary people talking and, you know, answering the emails, what they're hearing, what they're seeing, more so like if we're consistently getting the same question, then our website is not explaining it well, you know, so that kind of thing, but not really coming up what I would consider innovative programs, or I don't know how to define it. Maybe someone can define it for me. Being innovative.
Yeah, we tried actually this year, and if I recall correctly, we tried to define it in the question, and I can't remember specifically what we said in the question, but it's a great, because that's been a question in the past. People saying, okay, well, how do you define innovation? To let me know how to answer that question. But it's a fair question. I have seen so often, you know, I'll be sitting in a meeting with a client, and you know, there's the people in the meeting who don't say anything, and if you try to draw them out, all of a sudden they come up with, well, you know, I was talking to a member and they said blah, and I said that's interesting. They really need that, or they really think that, and you can then adjust your marketing certainly to speak to that. So that might be part of what people are seeing here as encouraging employees to just interact and share ideas.
I like that idea of a process, almost like everyone give me your ideas and then we'll knock off 99% of them and make that one idea. I don't know, but like to kind of just almost brainstorm and come up with it. I just feel like we're so slow when we come up with an idea. Like we pivot well during the you know, during the pandemic, and you know, we're great at pivoting and doing what we need to do to get it done a different way, but not necessarily anything new seems to take years to get off the ground.
Yeah,
it's hard because we need to get so many people's buy-in. You know, as membership people, we can sort of say, oh, you know, I hear from the members that they would really like this. This would be really great. Now, who does that? You know, we need IT support, we need program support, we need, you know, all of these different threads in the organization to both agree with us and be willing to take on a new project.
Yeah, great point. And we didn't have layoffs or anything, but we were already 2 staff members down when it all started. So when you have 4 full-time staff, there's not much lower you can go. And that is our biggest thing to coming up. We all have great ideas. I've heard that for the last 6 years. We're never short on great ideas, but limited resources, absolutely, for a small staff.
Yeah, I think with larger organizations, sometimes the opportunity to innovate because of the silos and all can be more challenging. I remember sitting across the table from an organization that we were consulting with, a huge organization, 300,000 members, and we were trying to get them to create a tiered membership structure because they had one size fits all, and they had everything from entry-level people to vice presidents who were, you know, able to be members. And I finally said, okay, let's go around the table and see if and give me a vote, you know, 1 to 10, if you think this is a good idea or not. You know, 1 being terrible and 10 being good. And I think we came out with a 5.1. So because everybody was saying, here's all the work I'd have to do to create this, and here's all the challenges I'd have. And yet in many cases, and you know, Dan realizes this from working together, we created a tiered membership with one of his organizations, and it's a lot of work, but the revenue side of it and the renewal side of it and the segmentation side of it is really powerful than having a single membership. And Dan was working with everything from daycare people to teachers to principals to district staff to superintendents of schools. And so a one size fits all is a real challenge in that environment when you have such diverse spending ability and such diverse needs. So Dan, you can tell me how challenging it was to implement that. I know it was.
Well, yeah, there was a challenge again with I think the whole approval and decision-making process sometimes does take a lot longer than it should. But for the most part, again, it was worth the investment that we made, because the return for that investment was really did pay off. It was just trying to figure out how to make it work in the best way possible, and deliver it in the way that we needed to. And then obviously the marketing part of things was crucial to that growth. So, but one of the questions, and I've replied to certain articles that you've written and stuff about this, about the innovative part, and how frustrated I've been over my 27 years in membership, is how organizations are just now recognizing the importance of membership value propositions, because of the pandemic. It's almost like they finally are forced to realize, oh, we have to do something. We have to innovate. We have to develop new products now that we're forced to. Again, it was kind of like before the pandemic, they were kind of pushed to innovate. Now they're shoved, it's like, just like shoving them off the cliff, like, you got to do this. And so, and I'm really encouraged by the data that you have here, especially with the decision-making processes that they've streamlined, that they've gotten out of their own way to actually get something done, and just taking the risks, because I think a lot of times they're very risk averse in a lot of ways. And now they're just like, well, we're scrambling here. We've got to do something with our what we're offering if we're going to keep or even bring in any new members during this crisis. And one of the other things that I wanted to ask, and I've seen, that I'm one of the lucky ones, and I think Sharon was talking about it too, that our industry grew during the pandemic and was kind of flush with cash, because people ran out to their grocery stores and panic shopped and with the food industry, it's just there's a lot of, it's their best year ever as far as revenues. Yet their margins are slim, and they had a ton of overhead that people just don't realize they had to invest in. But I wonder, and I'm curious to see, and I'm not sure we can dig into the data, but I'm curious to see how industry trends kind of map to the membership benchmarking trends that you're showing. So, and I've seen sessions about like the Nursing Association. Well, sure, the nursing industry probably grew, exponentially over the last 2 years because of the need and demand for those folks, and a lot of them coming out of retirement. And so then, they're going to join, or they're going to, look for support in that way. And so the ANA or other associations are going to grow because of it. So, and we grew as a result. Our membership grew as a result. So, those those industries that were decimated by this pandemic, I wonder how their membership obviously is most likely didn't grow. So, what's the influence there as far as the industry trends?
Yeah, and we've looked at that. I will say you're right. Healthcare did well, but I was on a call with the society, with the restaurants, and obviously they had some challenges. So there, you're going to have outside influences that are going to impact your association, and then you're going to have inside influences, because the Nurses Association did see, they saw huge growth. I mean, the biggest membership year we've ever had with them. But part of it was they responded to it, and they created a lot of resources for nurses during the pandemic and with COVID. So every month they had webinars, and they offered them worldwide. They'd have over 100,000 people register for them, free. So member or non-member, get them into the database. Okay, how do you stay safe? How do you keep yourself safe? What are the latest practices to help patients? And they could have passively sat back and said, oh, our nurses are really busy. They're stressed. We don't want to bother them. And they didn't. They actually proactively stepped in. And I think this next slide sort of speaks to that a little bit, Dan. Because I think one of the most encouraging things to come out of our research this year was that two aspects. One is, I think associations really did step up to help members during this time. And we've referenced, hardship dues, getting rid of hardship dues. We've referenced now, doing webinars specifically address things. And many of our clients did weekly webinars just to pulse check. How you doing? What can we do better? Let's share information, let's share resources. So 71% of the respondents said that they did see a significant or an increase in member engagement over this time. So I think associations stepped up, but here's the other piece of information I think is really important. People turn to associations for support and for help. And, we hear the death of associations, they're not going to survive, membership won't work, blah, blah, blah. But even though membership went down, those people who stayed turned to their association and asked for help and sought community and sought professional development and sought resources, sought networking to get through the challenges. And so I think that's the biggest encouragement coming out of this study is that engagement, and we're all seeking engagement of members, engagement went way up. When you have 7 out of 10 associations said they had increased engagement, I mean, that's a huge number. That is profound. And we saw that, across the board in many different ways. We saw that webinar attendance went from 53 to 83%, people who said they saw an increase in participation in webinars. Professional development went from 44 to 57%. Website visits to the members only section of the website went from 44 to 56%. So obviously in-person meetings went down, so I didn't include that here, but it was through virtual contact, through online contact, but we saw extraordinary growth in how people were accessing resources and engaging with their association.
I feel like that's the shove I was talking about.
Exactly.
That it's almost like they were shoved away from in-person meetings into doing it all virtually. And so by being shoved that way, they were like, well, let's just get it done and make this happen virtually. And we did that. We went from, we were lucky to have our big in-person in January prior to the pandemic. But then in the summer, we created a brand new, very similar event, the experience online. That we got huge numbers, and it took us 8 weeks to prepare for, when we usually take more than a year to prepare for an event that size. So it was extraordinary to see this, but it also I could see associations basically realizing we've got to create this virtually, or we're not going to.
We're toast.
Yeah, we're toast, right? And I remember back in the Great Recession, but when you started these studies, and we all the associations were basically kind of down on themselves, and not really sitting there going, oh, woe is us, we're going to have to budget for less dues and decreased membership growth, and instead of really taking that attitude, like you're saying, is that they're needing us. Our members are needing us. They're turning to us. We better do something about that, rather than just say, let's cut benefits, let's cut out staff and furloughs. And it was like I was looking around like, are you guys not realizing that our members are needing us right now? And it's almost like the crisis came and we pulled out, rather than jumped in with all our resources and rescue. So it's nice to see that more of that happened this time around, and I really feel like it's almost like wartime. Things do become innovative, and things get done when it comes to war, even though it's a terrible thing to have to go through. On the other end, it's like all these new things were developed because of it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've read that during the Depression was the time of more new business creation than any other 10-year period. So I do think as people are laid off, or as people find themselves in difficult situations, they need to innovate. They need to find ways to get things done, and that can really make a big difference. So it is, I do find it really encouraging. And I hope you all do, as you look at your organizations, in that we see a big stepping up by associations to serve members and to help members during this time. Any other thoughts on this before we go on to the next slide?
Yep, we're past 1 o'clock, but again, we usually hold over about 5 or 10 minutes, Tony. So I'm not going to stop you here.
All right, I'll just quickly go through some more things. But one of the things we did see is that a lot of groups have put in place engagement programs. So part of it is the members pushing to get stuff. Part of it is associations are actually putting in place engagement programs to get people to use the products and services and make sure they're aware of them. And a lot of that can be digital. It's here's the benefit of the month that's free to you. Hey, take advantage of it, access it, using email or digital for that. I'll just finish up with saying, we do on our website, just a little plug for MGI, and on our website, we do have a lot of resources that are free to download. You can get every single year of our benchmarking report. So Kevin, at some point, you'll probably want to download every single year and do a detailed analysis of the world. I think at some point it's going to be a PhD study. At some point, here's what's happened over the decades of membership. I'm not smart enough to do that, but you are, Kevin.
Sure. Thanks.
And one other thing is I did publish a book this year on membership recruitment. It's available on Amazon, and I'll give you a hint. Starting on the 28th, I'm going to do a 5-day sale, so you can download the ebook for free. So if you want to do that, you can, and you can obviously share that with your colleagues too, either on a Kindle or through your PC Kindle app, which you can download for free. So
Cool.
So that's the 28th through the 1st, I think, of October.
Yeah. And I got through it, and again, there's the way I hope at one point I'll put a book review up on my website of the book, but I know how I'm going to start the review, because Tony Rosell wrote the book on membership recruitment before he wrote the book on membership recruitment, because for years you've been doing helping out so many associations, and I was lucky enough to experience it for many years. So, well,
you recall, Dan, you inspired me, actually. I remember walking out of our office one day we were going to go to lunch at the Royal, and you said, you should write a book. And I said, good idea. And so it actually took me 2 years to do it, but I finally got it done.
So that's an idea from the front line there, Tony. So
it is
innovation. So no, but yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you did. It's there's a lot of people that, including myself, that have inspiration to write a book but haven't yet done it. So good for you, and for actually following through and doing that. But yeah, this is really great information, the data, Tony, and I have all my copies already downloaded and printed out, and many of them have many notes in them, because it's inevitable that no matter what year it is or what organization I'm working for, someone in leadership is going to ask me, well, how does our membership compare to other associations? And I usually say, well, there's no comparison because we are unique, but we do have some data from the benchmarking study that I can share with you that actually does give you at least a ballpark idea of how we compare, or at least size up to others. So, but yeah, we all know that there's no way of comparing, because no matter what, each organization I've seen there's some differences that are significant. So, but thank you, Tony.
Hey,
really
thanks for the
appreciate
time
your
today.
time.
It's great being with you, and I'm always happy to come back if you ever want to talk about some other issues. But thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks everybody else for participating.
Dan.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And
Thanks for coming on, Dan.
we'll see you next month.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
All right,
right,
bye.
thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Leave.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks. Take care.
All right.